folks, it's been a while since I've done an episode of the Ring Logs, but when you're trying to keep up on X amount of projects like I am, and working full-time and trying to sort of reevaluate what you're doing in regards to editing and podcasting, sometimes things get neglected. My apologies on that part. Now, I understand there are a few releases recently from WWE, along the likes of JTG, who seem to be avoiding the axe for about the better part of 7 years. Oksana's gone, which is kind of weird because I got the impression at one time that the WWE creative were interested in really pushing her, but that went south. Jinder Mahal's gone, along with Drew McIntyre, the chosen one. Yeah, that lasted long. Theodore Long is gone, but let's be objective here. Since being replaced by Vicky Guerrero as SmackDown GM, I still question that to this very day. He hasn't been seen on TV, so I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Theodore. The theme of him coming out and changing matches into tag matches, it's a guilty pleasure of mine. And to be honest with you, I'd always get a laugh and a smile out of it whenever I would watch SmackDown before the guys on RDR and just say, and this prompts, hold up there just a second please, and just to hear Oni and El go, oh my god, it's another tag match! Oh, it's another tag match. I don't approve of this. And now Mano Kabbalah, worst impression ever. I shall register my disgust on the internet. And he's looking at me thinking, I hate you, MJ. But, you know, Brodus Clay getting released. To be honest with you, I kind of had an inkling that he would eventually get the chop for this, because the whole funky dinosaur gimmick he had, it was cute to begin with, but he was never going to get out of mid-card with that gimmick. And then Xavier Woods takes his, for the most part, kind of takes his gimmick, and then takes his music, and then takes the Funkadactyls. So, and Xavier Woods is a guy that needs to be pushed. I mean, this is genuine, decent, raw talent, no pun intended, and they're not really utilizing him properly. Question I have to ask myself, why are guys not like Ryback not being given their marching orders and being told get out of the company? Because Ryback has become so irrelevant in at least the last year, because from October 2012 until this time last year, he was heavily pushed in the main event spot. But on the hindsight, it was down to things like Cena was injured, they needed someone to go for the title shots against then WWE Champion CM Punk, and he was their go-to guy. But the problem was he got over way too quick, whereas normally with a lot of superstars is you've got to build them gradually, you know, build them and book them properly. Two examples like this would be The Rock and WWE Hall of Famer, and my personal favourite, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because, yeah, Austin was white hot in terms of his popularity when he not only did the 96 King of the Ring winning speech, to then having that, you know, volatile feud with Bret Hart when they did the one of only 2 double face and heel turns, the first of which at WrestleMania 13, the second of which being at Payback 2013 between Ziggler and Del Rio, which the fans kind of were half and half on. They were very mixed opinions because they thought Ziggler turning face is kind of cool, because he's already over anyway, so it just makes sense to do it. And Del Rio, to be fair, they tried with him as a face, and it worked for a time because he'd done the heel thing, but I just guess it just wasn't getting over. But the point was, they built Austin progressively to the point that when he got to WrestleMania 14, he was ready. He was ready to lead the company into the future. And it's a similar thing with John Cena. You know, I'm kind of, you know, on the fence in regards to Cena, but the thing is, they built him steadily, and they built him up progressively. Whereas some superstars, they're just thrusted in way too quick. In regards to someone like CM Punk, he should have been pushed sooner, but we all know what happens. So, you know, getting back onto the subject, I think the main reason that they're, you know, not really just doing a spring clean, it's just the fact that WWE is losing a lot of money and probably a little bit more credibility than what they were accustomed to losing. Because consider the fact that since they put the network online, where the fans don't have to have the pay-per-view charge of $50 a time, and I think it's nearly $60 to $70 for WrestleMania, which, in my professional opinion, is ludicrous, because you gotta wonder where most fans, I mean, like Oni, for example, I'm not going to go into personal details because that's not my place to go to. But there are times where that $50 for a pay-per-view could come in handy elsewhere, where it could be more beneficial. And WWE putting the pay-per-views for free on the network, provided you pay your charge of $9.99 a month, which is more than reasonable in today's economy. In fact, it's extraordinarily more than reasonable. You know, it allows funds for other things in your life that you wouldn't have been able to have again or have so often. Now, I can understand with the TV deals that they're thinking, well, hang on, we're going to lose some money because they're doing this, but WWE are doing this for the fans. But that's just the problem. It's had a knock-on effect because Vince McMahon has lost in the stock market, lost a lot of money, and the TV deal, renewal deal they got with Universal was not as big as they thought it was going to be. But they need to get to 1 million subscribers, excuse me, just to break even. So that's probably one of the reasons why more than one or two members of the talent roster are being released. For some of them, they hadn't done anything relevant in years. 3MB, I'm not for them or against them, but I think they could have been a decent tag team championship stable, because I have my jokes about Heath Slater, most of them derived from Oni, but he's a talented wrestler, not pushed often enough. And I'm amazed that Justin Gabriel has actually survived being axed from the company as well. And then, of course, we get to Daniel Bryan being stripped of what I prefer to call the WWE Undisputed Championship. Now, it's an unpopular incident that has happened, but if Bryan is not medically cleared to wrestle, it's not something he's happy with. But Bryan is, as a person and as a superstar, is a decent, honourable human being. And he knows it's the right thing to do. But, that said, in regards to the mandatory 30-day rule of the titles being defended, doesn't it ever strike you as mildly amusing that WWE, for story purposes, only seem to enforce this when it suits them? And I shall bring up a few examples. First off, about 9 years ago, probably around this time, Trish Stratus had a back injury. And she was gone from TV from late May, early June, till the night after Unforgiven 2005. So we're talking mid-September. She returns. And also as a side note, she actually used yoga to actually rehab properly because nothing else was working, which then of course went into stratosphere yoga, but getting back on topic. She comes back and she's still the women's champion. To quote Botchamania, huh? And that was more than 30 days. Was she made to drop the belt? No. Then we come up to one of the most recent shticks, Dean Ambrose with his rather lengthy title defense drought with the United States title. And this is something I was kind of, how shall we say, not so great about, because that really devalued that mid-card title. But then again, most of the titles in the WWE have been devalued in recent years. One prime example is the Intercontinental Championship. I mean, before recently, where they've started that title to be defended a little bit more, particularly by the likes of Bad News Barrett. Not my personal cup of tea, but I can recognise that the guy's a decent workhorse wrestler. And to Sheamus, defending the US belt on a somewhat more fortnightly basis, both those belts have been devalued when these are belts that back in the day were the second most important prestigious championships of their respective companies that got the mid-card wrestlers ready for a main event run in the spotlight and as world champion. A couple of examples I can think of where the Intercontinental Championship was used to elevate people. Number one being a prime example, Stone Cold Steve Austin. The Rock was used as Intercontinental Champion before he became WWF Champion at the 1998 Survivor Series in the Deadly Games tournament. A little bit of history lesson for you here. Jericho, I mean, the amount of times he has had the Intercontinental Championship before being prepped to be World Champion. Personally, I think he should have gotten it sooner, but what would I know? I'm just a fan. Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero, he was used as Intercontinental Champion, but given that world title way too soon. But then again, it is better to have had it once than not at all. That's the way I look at it from. But lately, in recent years, they seem to just put it on anyone. I mean, Ezekiel Jackson, yeah, the Intercontinental Championship by taking off of then Wade Barrett. Was he pushed to the main event? Nope. Cody Rhodes really helped to restore some pride and credibility and prestige back to the Intercontinental Championship. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of the old school look it had. I don't dislike it. I just prefer the belt that I grew up in during the Attitude Era, with the the design that they had from, I believe, mid-1998 until late 2011, before Cody dropped it into a paper bag. I mean, I could see what they were trying to do, and plus, that was Cody's own money that he actually paid for to actually have the old school IC belt, polished up for a new generation. But yeah, I may not have liked Cody's heel gimmick at the time for what he was doing, but he was a decent champion for the Intercontinental division. Big Show was already over by the time he became Intercontinental Champion, and he was the only wrestler to win, at that time, all 5 active titles within the company. And Miz became Intercontinental Champion on more than a few occasions, but he wasn't pushed back up to the world title picture. And Miz is a guy who's a little bit underrated as a superstar. I mean, yeah, he could have made more with what he was given, but the powers that be just thought, nah, this ain't working for us. Which is a shame, because I like Miz. I think he's a decent tweener at best. Only doesn't like him, but there's quite a few people that Only doesn't like. Ain't that right, dude? One of them being Hogan. Brother. But yeah, those are the state of affairs in WWE at the moment. And according to Sean's View Entertainment, CM Punk's contract is being extended. So, if that is legit, and that's a huge if, I don't see the logic behind that, because CM Punk has made it perfectly clear he's retired. He's not coming back to WWE. And this is something I want to go off, not necessarily a pipe bomb, but more like, how should we say, just shelling my 2 cents out for this. I can understand why Punk has done this. Because he was sick of the part-time performers coming in, hogging the spotlight, but then someone says, but Undertaker's a part-time performer. There's a little bit of a difference with The Undertaker, in that when you consider what the man has given to the business in the, 20 plus years he's done with the company, and the matches he's created, the people he's put over, the torches he's passed, I think Taker is entitled to chosen times, shall we say. Where somebody like Rock coming back in. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a Rock fan. It was cool to see him do it one more time. But when you've got so many full-time superstars on that roster who deserve it more than he does, I take that as a bit of a slap in the face. Oh yeah, Rock was another one of the example of superstars who, particularly last year, he wins the belt at the Rumble, then yeah, okay, he defends it at Elimination Chamber, but it was more than 30 days between Elimination Chamber to WrestleMania. So, like I said earlier, WWE only enforce that 30-day rule whenever it suits them. I hope I'm not the only one that's seeing that. Anyway, back to Punk. I saw his point of view. With the exception of The Undertaker, there were part-time guys coming in that took up the main event spots that the hard-working superstars had worked their fingers to the bone to get to, and they're made to be the undercard guys, and Punk having to be in feuds with other people and being pushed down just so Orton and Cena can hog the spotlight. So, yeah, long-winded. I can understand why he was frustrated. I can understand why he did it. Do I approve of what he did? Absolutely not. I mean, let's take one example. Brock Lesnar. I know Random's going to give me heat for that later. But the main reason he left in 2004 was he got sick of the travelling. But he did one very good thing about it. He honoured his contract. Make your appearances. Do what is asked of you in the contract. And that's the thing, I don't agree with how Punk did it. He just took his ball and went home. And even Austin has criticised him somewhat heavily for that. Because, cooler heads prevail. Get yourself back to the company. But the fact that Punk has made it somewhat public that he has actually retired, because even he had stated that he wanted to be able to be in a position by the time he retires he's not going to be physically compromised going into later life. You know, he wanted to be able to retire with all his faculties and his body parts intact, and I don't blame him on that one, because there are quite a few wrestling tragedies that have had to retire, whether it be injury forced them to retire, like DDP, for example, or Darren Drozdov, who is sadly no longer with us, I believe. Edge had to retire through injury, but he made the tough choice to retire because he didn't want to end up in a wheelchair. And it was a similar set of circumstances with Austin, because his neck was that messed up that maybe a couple more matches and chances are he might not be able to do what he wanted to later in life. So it's a dicey situation, you know, because CM Punk was a guy who stood for principles, you know, and spoke his mind. All he had to do was just speak his mind even further and say, look, come on, you know this ain't working. Why are we going back with the status quo that the fans clearly dislike? But I think he reached his boiling point. And to be honest with you, I think he was physically burnt out as well, because, you know, you can criticize a wrestler's performance, the way they do their character, but keep in mind, they're on the road for at least a good, 200 plus days throughout the year. They're in a different town every few days. Not really enough time just to decompress and, recharge the batteries. It takes a toll on their systems, and I think Punk should have had more time off from last year's WrestleMania to when he actually made his return. I think he made his return too early. If he had been given from WrestleMania till SummerSlam or Night of Champions, then that would have given him more time, so he would have been refreshed, he would have had more energy, his injuries would have healed up properly, but you can't wrestle efficiently if you're running off of fumes and reserves, and I think Punk just got burnt out. It's a sad state of affairs, but it's a tough business. It is what it is. I'd like it for Punk to still be here, but I think realistically that's never going to happen. Sadly. Well, sorry to have kept you so long, and that's been this recent episode of the Ring Logs, and hopefully I'll start making more of these again now that I've got more time to do these now, and I'm even doing them a little bit more effective with this wonderful little backdrop behind me. Isn't it nice? Until then, folks, I've been MJ Knight, and I'll see you again.